Welcome to APR Supply's Tech Tips for the Pros. Today we'll be discussing how to troubleshoot the ignition failure or loss of flame fault. To properly diagnose these, you are going to need a good quality manometer. We're using the SDMN5, as well as a good multimeter. We're using the SC680. You also need the manufacturer's instructions so you can follow sequence of operation. Here are some questions to ask yourself. If the flame never ignites, is the gas valve open? Was there gas available? Did the igniter ever come on? That's why it's important to be able to just visualize the sequence of operation. If the flame never ignites, we need to diagnose that by checking the gas valve. First, check to see that the igniter is glowing. Now get your meter and manometer. Connect the manometer to the manifold pressure port. Connect the voltmeter to the gas valve low voltage wires. Start the furnace and verify that when the 24 volts is applied to the gas valve, there's actually gas pressure on the manifold. If there is voltage to the gas valve but no pressure, the gas valve has failed. If there's no voltage to the gas valve, the circuit board is most likely the problem. If the flame has ignited and then it's lost during the flame test or trial for ignition, the next thing to do is to get your meter. We're going to connect our meter in line with the flame sensor. We're going to look to see how many microamps DC flows in the flame circuit to prove that we have a flame. If there is a flame signal, but the board continues to say that there's a flame fault, we have to follow the wires to make sure that the flame signal is making its way back to the circuit board. The board's getting the flame signal, but it still shows loss of flame. We probably have a circuit board problem. However, usually the problem is related to the fact that we don't get a flame signal. We have to visually see that the flame has covered the flame sensor. Secondly, we want to make sure that the flame sensor is clean. A dirty flame sensor will not give a good flame signal. Thirdly, that the wire is properly connected to the flame sensor and that it's making it back to the board. Now, last but not least, we're going to dive into the things that often give us grief in this area. We have to make sure that we have a proper ground all the way back to the electrical panel. The flame sensing depends on proper grounding of the furnace. The flame signal goes from the flame rod through the flame and off to ground. We will measure that in DC microamps to ground. If we don't have a good ground, we'll never get a good flame signal. So that means it's important for you as an installer to make sure that you've properly grounded the furnace. It's also important for us to be able to test to make sure our ground is good. So two things to do in this test. One is to test from the black or hot wire to earth ground on the furnace. Make sure that we have the 120 to 125 volts AC. Secondly, you can quickly make sure that you have no voltage between the common wire, usually the white wire, and ground to make sure that our furnace has a proper ground installed. One more thing to check is to see that the board is sending out 80 to 120 volts AC to the flame sensor. Connect your meter set to AC volts from the flame sensor wire to ground. If we don't have that voltage, 80 to 120 volts, the board is bad. Hopefully one of these things will already have solved your problem with a loss of the flame signal. Thank you for watching APR's Tech Tips for the Pros. Hope to see you again soon.